I talked in another video about the popularity of certain camera brands, camera systems based on social media, looking at their follower counts, looking at reviews on Google and on Amazon, kind of a non-scientific way to just evaluate like who's into these brands, like how popular are they really, how well are they selling. Well, oddly enough, I do that video, and then Canon Rumors posts the 2019 global camera market share numbers are out, and Canon leads the way, which aligns pretty closely to what we were looking at the other day with, social media influence and reviews around these camera systems, although Sony is definitely up there. And on the list, we have the big three are still the big three, but there's a new number two being Sony. So Canon, according to this report, has 45% of the global camera market share. That is staggering. Almost 50% of the global camera market is Canon, but I believe it. You go out in the wild and you see people shooting, and it's Canon, Canon, Canon everywhere. Everyone's got the Canon neck straps. Sony, 20%. Far, far lower down compared to Canon, but surpassing Nikon, who's at 18.6%. Now we get to the sad, disappointing stuff of Fujifilm and Panasonic, both at 4.7%. And this aligns pretty well with the kind of social media numbers we were looking at. All this is in relation to is not to say like, oh, Canon's the best because they're number one, or look at Sony, they're number two, ha ha ha. It's just to say like this is where these companies sit, because I've made a few videos talking about why, Panasonic keeps losing, why Sony keeps winning, and Canon keeps failing. And although Canon by the numbers isn't failing, Sony is definitely winning, creeping up the charts, and Panasonic keeps losing kind of there at the bottom. And this is, data reports, not just let's look at social media followers. So it says, interestingly, Canon increased their market share over 2018 by 2.4%. However, the overall market contracted by 22.4%. So they have a larger piece of a smaller pie again. Is that probably from smartphone sales and people just using cameras on their smartphone? Probably. Is it people just knowing that Canon is a brand of camera that's very popular? Yes. The Canon brand goes a long way, even if they're not releasing the most cutting edge cameras. I mean, they are in some ways for photography, but Sony has been hot on their heels for a long time with mirrorless, and the technology that's allowed there, which is better kind of autofocus and tracking and all that stuff. And now Canon is finally in that realm as well. So staying competitive. And I think it's interesting to talk about because it just goes to show you that just because something's number one doesn't mean it's the best, nor does making the best product necessarily get you to number one. It's a variety of factors that we're always talking about. From my personal perspective, Canon keeps failing because they keep dropping the ball on all these cameras, but for many people, they're solid home runs. They're winning. Like, they'll keep buying Canon, they have Canon glass, and they'll buy Canon to the day they die. And in that transition gap, you have a lot of people who are switching to Sony, people who are leaving Nikon, maybe people who are leaving, not buying cameras anymore just in general, because maybe they're fine with what they have. Maybe they have a 5D Mark III and they don't need to buy anything new. Or maybe they have a Sony, A7 III and then that's good enough. Although it'd probably be more like an A7 II or something, a little bit older for this report in terms of those number changes. But I do think it's interesting, the long-term effect of some of these things, because just because you're number one now doesn't mean you're going to be number one forever. And just because you're at the bottom of the list doesn't mean you'll be there forever. It's about the continual growth over time. Canon, for a long, long time, and Nikon as well, were top dogs. Best of the best, number one, number two, Canon and Nikon, and that was the argument. And now Sony, in such a relatively short period of time, has made it to number two. And in a lot of ways, you see people leaving Canon for Sony, because they're just making these incredibly powerful cameras that give people the features they want. Are they the best cameras? No, there is no best camera. It's the best tool for the job. It's the best camera for the individual because they know the jobs they're going to use it for. Why does Panasonic keep losing? Well, they're kind of late to the party in a lot of ways. Their autofocus isn't all that great. They weren't doing full frame until just recently. So there's a lot of foundational setbacks. Even though Micro Four Thirds, I think, is a pretty compelling system for a lot of people, hey, these cameras are smaller and lighter. The lenses are smaller and lighter. They're cheaper overall. They can actually do some higher end video stuff that the full frame ones haven't been able to do. They're just now catching up. But also too, when someone's asking what camera should I buy, some beginner photographer or someone just getting into it, almost everyone is going to be faced with that. Okay, well, you're going to go from your smartphone and you're going to be going to kind of an interchangeable lens system. And they're going to go, what? Like, I got to buy lenses now? What are you talking about? And they're just like, yeah. I mean, there are some cameras with fixed lenses, but really, if you want to have the best image quality, which people usually just associate with a blurry background, you're going to say, well, you're going to need a fast lens and you have to explain aperture. And then you're going to, right alongside that conversation, you're going to have to explain sensor size. And the moment someone hears, oh, full frame, like that's the good one. Well, yeah, because like APS-C has some uses for, wildlife or sports or something where you want a little bit longer, reach with your lens. But yeah, in general, full frame is going to give you the best quality. They go, okay, great. What's the full frame camera I should get? They're not even going to consider micro four third. Because then you say, well, I mean, if you want something that's, cheaper and a little bit more lightweight, and they go, yeah, but that's not professional though. And it's like, well, some professionals use it. It's like, yeah, but like at the NFL, what do they use? At sporting events, at a wedding I went to, I saw they had a Canon camera. That's like the best one, right? Well, best is hard to say, but it makes sense why people just gravitate towards Canon, but the people also leave Canon and go maybe towards Sony or something else. And Panasonic and Fujifilm have a long way to catch up. However, they're doing, in my mind, Fujifilm and Panasonic are doing the right things as far as offering. I mean, Fujifilm with the GFX 100 going like medium format, okay, beyond full frame. Let's go medium format. Let's put video on the thing. Let's go crazy. It'll be expensive, but like we could start attracting some of these like, the ambassadors, for lack of a better word, or like the influencers, the people who talk about these things day in and day out and use them and then are talking to other people and they see, oh, this is what this person's using. And Panasonic too, with, the S1 line, the S1R, the S1H, having features that no one else is doing in hybrids, at least at that time. And even still to this day, even with the announcements of the A7S III and the R5 and the R6, they're doing things that are unique and innovative in a way that appeal to maybe more niche demographics, but they create really powerful tools that get a lot of like brand affinity, in that people get attached to the brand because it's like doing something that no one else is doing. If you want to take high quality photos, you can do that with pretty much any camera, even from the last 10 years probably. You can take high quality photos. It's the other things around that hybrid system that matter the most. Is it the autofocus? Is it the stabilization? Is it the low light? Is it the codec, the color science, which is sort of debatable about how much that matters, but for a regular, maybe average person, it matters a lot. If they're just shooting JPEGs and they want them to look great. Is it the size, the weight, the feature set, the usability, how it looks, how it feels? All this stuff is really, really important for getting people to like think beyond just taking a picture, because there's plenty of cameras that can take pictures really, really well, and they keep getting better and better and better in terms of autofocus and speed and frames per second and all that. It keeps getting better, but it's not like a camera from 5 years ago is going to take bad photos. However, a hybrid camera from 5 years ago is probably going to take much more inferior video. The video features still have a lot of area to grow in terms of the codecs, in terms of autofocus, in terms of stabilization and resolution and frames per second, frame rates and whatnot. So I think it's interesting to see how each of these companies have kind of approached it and the things they're doing currently and maybe where they'll go in the future to maybe see, like, is this the chart we'll be looking at 5-10 years from now? Probably, but who knows? Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. I did think it was good to talk about, though, in the context of you can do it with social media and reviews and Google Analytics and all that stuff, but you can also just look at the sales reports more or less of the market share of these companies and how much they actually influence the group as a whole or the industry as a whole. There's a lot more Canon photographers out there than anything else. They're basically half of the industry is Canon and the other half is everybody else. That's massive. But don't count Sony out because they're creeping up the charts pretty fast for, how I mean, they got into mirrorless first and earliest, but they're still late to the game compared to Canon and Nikon. And then Panasonic and Fuji are also doing some fun, interesting stuff. So I like looking at all these brands. They all have something interesting to offer. And it really is, there is no best camera. It's just about picking the right tool for the right job. And usually that comes down to you, the person who's using the tool, deciding what's going to work best for you.